do so if you haven't already. So to begin, welcome to our event called From Academia to Innovation, Navigating the Startup Journey. We're really excited to be hearing from 3 great scientists who have navigated this entrepreneurial journey and hearing about their career paths today. So I will be going over the outline of our event so you just know what to expect. So first I will give a brief introduction to the IUBMB trainee initiative in case this is your first time hearing about it. And then each of our 3 guests today will talk a little bit about themselves and how they got to where they are in their careers. And then we'll start out with some focus questions that we've prepared, and then hopefully hear from what the audience is curious about hearing about. So if you have questions for our speakers, please use the Q&A box, which is separate from the chat box, to pose questions directly to the panelists. And we as moderators can pick from those later during the open Q&A. And if you see another question that you like, then feel free to upvote it so that it is higher on our list. So the IUBMB trainee initiative is an initiative by trainees for trainees, and our goal is to bring together scientists from all around the world, and we hope to put on events covering educational, technical, and professional development topics to bring together trainees from all over the world at all different levels, from high schools to postdoc. And we do this by hosting events like the one we're at today. And you can also keep up to date with other opportunities that come up through our social media channels. Oh, we're also missing our LinkedIn, which is new. But the website is also here, and this is where the recordings from the events get posted. So you can look through our catalog of previous events covering a wide variety of different topics that are maybe of interest. So if you're interested in checking those out, I recommend you go to the website. The only other thing is wanted to take a minute to introduce the team that is bringing this webinar to you today. So this is me. I'm Sunny. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of California, Berkeley in the USA. And also here today are my colleagues on the Pan-American Society for Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. Our subcommittee of the Global IUBMB Trainee Initiative also has Sana at UBC in Canada, and Elisa and Rocio in Argentina. So with that, I will pass it over to Rocio to introduce our speakers.
Hi, everyone. Today we have the privilege to have 3 excellent expertise and 3 excellent scientists. Today we have Leandro Sanchez, co-founder of Nat4Bio, Amy Sturchuk, co-founder of Starasgene, and John Axerio Silis, Senior VP and Head of IA Apps, Engineer Tempus. So we are going to start now with Leandro Sanchez.
Okay, thank you. I will start sharing my presentation. Yeah, we're ready.
Yes.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Thank you everyone also. It's a pleasure to be here. And I would like to thank the organization for inviting me, and especially Maria Elisa for guiding me through the process. My idea for this talk is to tell you a little about my experience over the years, where I started with a scientific training, then academia, and now I'm immersed in the entrepreneurship world, not knowing where this path will lead, but enjoying every step of it now. I named this talk Biotechnology, a Science of Opportunity, not only because of the opportunity offered to the humanity, but also because of the opportunities it has created in my life so far. Well, even though I don't like to talk about myself, I will start telling you about me to put just this story in context now. I was born in 1982, 42 years ago, in a town called San Pedro in the northernmost province of Argentina. The name is Jujuy, which has one of the most beautiful landscapes, in my opinion, in Argentina. No. After finishing my high school, I moved to Tucumán province at 17 to study for a degree in biotechnology at the National University of Tucumán. Biotechnology was just getting started in the province at that time. After 5 years, I graduated with a degree in biotechnology there. I then had a chance to get a scholarship from CONICET, which is the federal science agency of Argentina that brings together most of the Argentinian scientists. Thanks to this scholarship, I completed my doctoral thesis at the pilot plant for industrial microbiological processes, which the name is PROIMI. During this work, I searched for microorganisms called extremophiles, specifically psychrophiles, which can grow at low temperatures. We use samples from islands in southern Argentina, which are subantarctic environments with average temperature around 0 and 10 degrees Celsius. After isolating cold-adapted bacteria, we search for those able to produce inhibitory compounds against pathogens. The goal was to have organisms that can protect, for example, foods that need cold chains for transportation or storage. Over the next 5 years, I have been immersed in the world of academia, publication, and basic research. But I've always had a vision of one day being able to apply and transfer this knowledge to the productive or industrial sector. Once I finished my doctoral thesis, I had the chance to do a postdoctoral stay in Germany. I worked with researchers from the Technical University of Berlin to continue studying bacteria from Patagonian wetlands. We found several new species able to oxidize and deposit iron particles. Later in 2011, I had one of the most fascinating opportunities in my career, which was to participate in the Antarctic sampling campaigns aboard an oceanographical ship. For 2 months, we collected samples all over the Antarctic Peninsula and the South Atlantic Island to search for these cold-adapted microorganisms that can produce new molecules with biotechnological potential. No? This was the ship course during the 2 months, and today there is a documentary film on YouTube about this expedition. If you want to watch it, the name is Bitácora, El Continente Blanco, and is currently available. During this expedition, we collected samples of water and marine sediments. And then in the laboratories on board the ship, the samples were processed in filters that retained the microorganisms, mainly bacteria and fungus, which we then use to grow in the laboratories, no? And search for new molecules inside them or produced by them. From this collection of microorganisms, we found many of great interest for agronomic applications. For example, this bacterium was able to inhibit the growth of a phytopathogenic fungi, the name is Macrophomina fasciolina, which caused the major losses on soybean crops. We found another ones against Fusarium and Penicillium, for example, in this collection. Here you can see how the pathogenic fungus grows up to a point where the bacteria stops its growth and prevents it from spreading. Here in the micrograph, you can see more clearly how the IFA of the fungus disintegrates as it gets closer to the bacteria until it's completely colonized below, in the picture below, by the bacteria. Then we also discovered certain bacteria were beneficial to the soybean plants. Here we observed how the roots could develop much more nodulation, which means more yield in these specific plants of soybean. No? In this way, my field of expertise changes somehow from academic and basic science to a more applied science, more focused on the development of biological products for specific applications. Recently, we discovered in our collection certain bacteria and fungi that can build biopolymers from sugar. These biopolymers are normally used by the fungus to get attached and infect the plant, but we changed the approach and decided to produce them to protect the fruits. We know that about 50% of fruit is wasted along the distribution chain to the consumer. This generates more than $500 billion in annual losses and wasted 25% of the water used to grow crops. This loss may be due to physicochemical factors such as dehydration, loss of firmness, over-ripening, and oxidation, or to biological factors, mainly related to pathogenic microorganisms. It is worth mentioning that the physicochemical degradation is currently mitigated in industry by using chemical waxes, which are obtained from the oil industry. Because of that, we have started to develop natural coatings based on microbial polymers or biopolymers, which form a protective layer and contain active molecules that protect the fruit against the infection of pathogens. By the combination of the two layers, we can enhance the shelf life extension of different fruits and contribute to decreasing or even eliminating the use of synthetic chemical products. We have started a laboratory testing on different fruit models like strawberries, mandarins, avocado, lemons mainly, blueberries, and another one, pears and apples also. And it's different for each formulation. Later in 2022, I decided to go ahead with this idea and met Joaquin Fish, which is my partner now, in a company building incubation process organized by a Latin American fund, Breedex. Together with Joaquin, we were able to quantify and study the unit economics of this proposal for the market. We created Nat4Bio, a company dedicated to developing zero residue and edible coatings that protect fruit from spoilage. Our MVP is a food-grade coating for citrus using already GRAS-approved compounds. In addition, a similar formulation also showed good performance protecting berries from the infection of botrytis is the main infection in berries. And our coating also extend the shelf life of produce even on climateric fruits like avocados and mangoes or bananas, which is a big concern during long transit times. This is due because of the release of ethylene once it's protected by this coating. No? To make this happen, we put together a team of people with a mix of scientific and business know-how. We've got 5 full-time staff with backgrounds in microbiology, material sciences, formulation, phytopathology, and fruit physiology, all of which are relevant to developing new bioproducts. Our company came out of the Breedex incubation process, and not longer of that, we got investment from IndieBio, which is one of the top biotech startup acceleration programs worldwide. At Nat4Bio, we're on the mission to reduce food waste through solutions inspired by nature. And I invite you to drop our webpage is nat4bio.com, and I'm open to to question or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Leandro. Really interesting, your work. Amazing. So
Thank
we have questions after. So now I would like to Amy to present, if you can.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, like
Select-
Leandro said, thanks for having me. Hopefully you can see my slides. So today I'm going to focus more on kind of the technical barriers, I guess, for scientists who are starting a company in case, you have something in mind. And yeah, I'm happy to take more questions at the end. But yeah, so I am here representing Serogene Therapeutics. And I'll talk a little more about what we do. But just to start off, I did my PhD at the University of British Columbia, which is in Vancouver, Canada, in the group led by Christian Kastrup, who was a biochemist and biomedical engineer who was studying the kind of molecular mechanisms of blood coagulation. So that's the formation of blood clots in response to injury. And there's a whole bunch of systems that regulate that process. So he was very much focused on, how the proteins in your body come together to form a blood clot and what regulates that process. And so what started out as an academic project of taking some new tools that were available to us, specifically siRNA, or short interfering RNA, to knock down certain proteins and see how that affected blood clotting. Quickly in the process of this research, we realized that actually these little molecules work really well to control blood coagulation and either promote blood coagulation or slow it down, which could have really important potential for treating disorders that affect blood coagulation, such as hemophilia, in which patients have lower levels of coagulation proteins than they need to, so they can't form clots as easily, or patients with thrombosis that have overactive coagulation, and that causes a risk to them in terms of heart attacks and strokes. So anyway, obviously we were approaching this from an academic problem-solving type of view, but talking with clinicians who we were collaborating with realized that this had a lot of potential. So a little bit more about siRNA technologies. They've just started becoming adopted as drugs because they're very long-lasting and very specific as well. So you avoid a lot of safety risks. So we use lipid nanoparticles to deliver our siRNA cargos and knock down these proteins that are implicated in blood coagulation disorders. Now, when we started out, we were totally a group of academics. So coming from Christian Kastrup's lab, we had myself and my partner Li Jin Zhuang, as well as Peter Cullis, who is an expert in drug delivery technologies, but again, is an academic. So we were very lucky that Christian and Peter had experience starting companies before, because they really knew that we had to file patents in order to protect this intellectual property. So going forward, we expanded our team by increasing the business acumen in the team and having advisors in business development and a CEO that now comes from a big pharma company that can lead us through the development of the preclinical packages and design our clinical trials, as well as raise all the money that's needed for this process. So I'm going to stop there and we'll take questions at the end.
Thank you, Amy. Really interesting and different from Leandro. So now, John, you can show us.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, very nice to be here, everybody. My name is John Xerio Chilius, and I am currently SVP and head of AI apps engineering at Tempus. I wanted to kind of give you an idea of my kind of career pathway and kind of give you an idea of like how I started originally from academia and move into entrepreneurship and ultimately into a public company. So I've really seen it all over the past 15 plus years. And yeah, I'm happy to share some of the ups and downs of what I went through, as well as some tips in terms of getting to market and yeah, taking technology from academia and commercializing that. So kind of rewinding back to 2006, I did a Bachelor of Science at the University of British Columbia. I thought that I would always go into a corporate job. And one thing that I'll call out is I did a co-op program, and that was an incredible experience to get a flavor of what it really means to work in a corporate environment. So I worked for small companies, large companies. It was over the course of 2 years. So companies like Toyota and Bosch, Honeywell, and I worked in Germany and in Canada. And it just gave me a great sense of what it's like to just work in industry. And throughout that process, I realized that I did not want to work in a cubicle and as an engineer for the rest of my life. And so I said, well, I have to change things up. And if I ever wanted to kind of move up from a career perspective, I wanted to have a strong technical backing. So I said, well, let's just go for a master's degree, just to kind of differentiate myself. So I applied to MIT and Stanford. Those were my only two schools. I got rejected from MIT, and so Stanford was the only one. I'm like, great, let's give it a shot. So I applied for astronautics and aeronautics. So it's a program primarily for rocket science. So kind of designing rockets and yeah, and very as well as aerodynamics in general. I was always interested in aerodynamics. I was always like a car guy and spent a lot of time in watching Formula One races. And as part of that program, I realized that everyone around me at Stanford was doing PhDs. Like I was the odd person out. Literally, like 90% of people doing a master's were planning to do a PhD and were very research oriented. So, and I wasn't at all. But I love Stanford, and I'm like, well, I might as well have an extra 6 years of vacation here on campus because it was so beautiful. So I then tried to figure out how I'm going to pay for my PhD. I was always, like I said, very interested in Formula One. So I started contacting Formula One teams to say, hey, would you be interested in some sort of research proposal or some sort of research program to optimize some of the geometry on your car? So I reached out to like probably 10 teams, and one of the teams bit, which was Toyota Formula One, which right now they're out of Formula One, but at the time they were in. And through that program, I got some funding that then I was able to go to a research advisor to really start this program. So I was lucky there, and kind of I self-funded myself to ultimately get my PhD in kind of, it was very focused around aerodynamics and on uncertainty quantification around these bluff bodies. And again, I wasn't into healthcare. I wasn't into biochemistry at all back then. I thought I was going into a very mechanical engineering type role. And then I got toward the end of my PhD, I realized that some of the tools I was using for aerodynamics could actually be used to simulate blood flow and airflow in the body. And that was a really cool type of application of bringing engineering into healthcare. And so I started doing these simulations of patients who had sleep apnea. And I got a knock on the door from somebody who actually had sleep apnea, who wanted to get a better sense of what was happening in their body, especially around airflow around their body. I said, sure, I'm happy to help. And so that guy that ultimately knocked on my door became a co-founder of mine. And we started at the time a company which was called Morpheus. And Morpheus, the intent of that company was to use computational tools and computational engineering to try to simulate upper airway disease, and ultimately kind of replace the sleep study or have a non-invasive way to really assess what's going on. So we actually spent a year on that program. and it failed. Like we got absolutely nowhere. We were able to get interest from investors, but really there wasn't an opportunity to just monetize for so many different reasons. So my partner had the business background, I had the engineering background, and what we were lacking was really a healthcare background, because we know that we wanted to work in this area to do like patient-specific simulations, but we didn't know what. So we actually interviewed over 100 physicians to assess what is the pain point, or where could technology like this to do patient-specific simulations be useful. And one of those folks that we interviewed was a radiologist who was very interested in using these tools to simulate blood flow in the body. And so that's where we realized, hey, there's a potential here to use imaging as well as computational fluid dynamics and just analytical tools to really identify cardiovascular disease. And so that's where we kind of shifted from Morpheus and became Arteris kind of in 2014, 2015 timeframe. And we really commercialized this technology that was originally from Stanford. So we worked with the Office of Technology Licensing, brought that into the company, and then from there we essentially productized this solution, this software that ultimately would be in the hands of radiologists to assess cardiovascular disease. And the imaging input at the time was MRI. So, and a specific technique of MRI called 4D flow, which is a way to measure blood flow non-invasively using MR and radio frequency pulses. So from there, we focused very much around bringing this to the market in the US and Europe. We partnered with GE Healthcare, which is a large manufacturer of MRI scanners. And then from there, through 2015 through 2022, we really expanded applications and really became a platform to really process any sort of medical images across that time, and use AI to basically detect and classify and segment images to really help radiologists with their day-to-day workflow. And so that was an awesome time. I actually became CEO around 2020. And I learned a lot. We raised over $70 million on that pathway. We were at our peak, had over 100 folks in the company. Very much still a technical company, but we also had salespeople all around the world that were selling our technologies. And in 2022, we actually got acquired by Tempus. So Tempus is a company that's focused around precision medicine. They have half their business is around genomic testing, and then half the business is around extracting insights from that data to help folks along their care pathway. So I came in primarily very radiology focused, and since then I've really expanded my role to bring in what I call multimodality AI. So bring in as much information on the patient to really assess and provide insights to optimize patient care pathways. So these modalities include electronic medical records. So think of it as clinical notes, basically text. We bring in imaging. So think of it as digital pathology images, radiology images, and we also bring in all the genomic information as well. So the idea is to bring all this content into context and use AI to ultimately extract these insights to help patients along their care pathway. So with that, I will pause and yeah, we can open up to questions.
Thank you, John. Really interesting path and super novel. Super novel presentations. So we have now some questions, general questions for you all. I'm going to present. Just give me a minute.
Okay. Okay. Very good talks for you three. Thank you very much for your time and all the things that you share with us today. So we are thinking about this, like what was the biggest challenge that you faced when you setting up your business, and particularly in your region, to see if there are differences or coincidence. So maybe, I don't know if one of the you three gonna start.
Well, me, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, there are many challenges into entrepreneurship in biotechnology, especially in South America. No, we know that the context is different in the US or maybe some European countries, mainly in terms of the installed capacity of highly complex equipment and its availability. Particularly in my case, in Argentina, the context is even more challenging because due to issues such as inflation or limitation and the import of inputs. However, we know that as we have these deficiencies, we have also great opportunities here, no? Many industries are keen to try new products and open their doors to this new alternative. Another important point is the funding in Argentina. Most of the investments in science came from the states, no, or public funds. So there is not much available. Fortunately, this has changed somehow in the recent years with more venture capital here. There are more venture capital investors here in Argentina. So certain industries starting to set up this kind of venture to arrive to the technologies the CONICET have somehow. So maybe it's a good time.
I can speak a bit about the situation in Canada, which the Canadian government actually does a pretty good job in trying to grow our biotech sector. So there's a lot of, for instance, government-funded lab spaces where startups can work. So I would say kind of the biggest challenges, of course, as I was saying, because we started off as a scientific academic team, was just figuring out how to structure ourselves as a company, and finding the appropriate people to come on board and to help us with those aspects. And then fundraising is somewhat of a challenge. I would say Canadian investors are a bit more conservative than American investors, but then American investors would prefer you to have your headquarters in the States. So just walking that line as well.
I think I'll add just a few points to that. Having, there are challenges in terms of setting up the business or finding capital, finding the right employees, figuring out your equity split with your founders, so yeah, things like that are kind of one level of challenge. But I would say an order of magnitude harder challenge is getting to market quickly and finding product market fit. So are folks willing to pay for your technology? Who's your ultimate customer? And yeah, how long will it take you to monetize? That is the biggest challenge. Like I said, maybe 100 times harder than finding a great co-founder because with commercial success, everything else is solved. So I'd say, yeah, that is by far the hardest.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is now, what resources and support systems are available for academics interested in entrepreneurship?
Well, I think it depends on the type of business. Entrepreneurship in software or fintech is different from doing in biotechnology or agtech. Currently, the funds are being more restrictive somehow, or let's say demanding in terms of proof of concept of an idea or concept to invest. This was different in the past. where an innovative idea could already be invested, some funds are now asking for sales of a product or clients with a letter of intent to buy a product to invest somehow, no? But in South America, there are more and more companies builders now, and more resources are being devoted to transfer the knowledge generated in science and technology organization. So I think the future is looking good here, maybe. You never know.
I guess, like I said a little bit before, the Canadian government is offering a lot of supports in terms of infrastructure for startups, but also with the universities that I've worked with, basically all the universities have some type of incubator or group that's focused on, you know, promoting entrepreneurship among their researchers. So we've gotten a lot of help and advice that way from both people related to the university and also who just act as advisors and are from pharma companies. And then that's the third one I would say is, you know, we've had a lot of good luck reaching out to other companies that are in a similar space. You know, once you get into a pretty narrow field, the group of people that are in a position to be an expert and help you gets pretty small. So, and what we found is that a lot of them are willing to act as advisors, either formally or informally. So I think that's really good research as well, or a really good resource.
Yeah, +1 to all the incubators. We were in 4 of them here in the Bay Area. And yeah, they were incredible. So just to give you some examples, like, yes, they give you office space. They give you like basic free compute, or through Amazon Web Services or GCP, like you can get a ton of free computing. Obviously, access to investors, like there's dedicated demo days in each one of these incubators, and you have basically free pitches that you can just pitch, you know, 10, 20, 30 investors at a time. You have access to advisors or consultants and their networks. So even if you're not officially part of a specific incubator, you know, just connect with them through LinkedIn and other online mechanisms, and you'll have access. You know, if you can get somebody for free, great. But even if you have to give away some of your early equity shares in order to bring somebody on, I would recommend it, especially somebody who's been there, done that, kind of maybe from the academic side and moved into industry. It helps a ton, because, you know, to the point that was made around, right now investors want to see commercial traction, like especially if you want to raise a lot of money, or if you want to you know, when I say a lot of money, if you want to raise $5, $10, $15 million from any like Silicon Valley based investor, you're going to give away 30% of your company either way. And ideally you have you know, more than a 1 billion total addressable market. If it's less than that, it's hard just to get investment, unless you have some sort of great commercial traction. So again, you have to think big. You have to you know, just tap into the network. And yeah, there's especially if you go like the venture capital route. If you want to go like the bootstrapping route or the grant route, you can do that and give away less of your company, but those are all like, you know, trade-offs.
Good. So incubators are good for a start. I don't know if you know, Leandro, some incubators in Argentina.
I don't know if I have, yeah.
Do
I
you
don't know,
have experience?
incubators, maybe they are company builders programs like GridX, SF 500 is another one, and there are plenty more, yeah. But
Okay,
GridX, I think, is the most important one.
good. So depends on the government, which kind of government we have. So
no, they are
in a different
private.
country, I say it's like
yeah. But they are
the
private
funding, right?
funds, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So now we have some questions from the audience. Ellie, you.
Yes, I'm here. So we have one question for Amy. Said, hey Amy, thanks for sharing. What are some of the commercialization benefits of the SERNI, I don't know, or antibody, small molecule drugs or peptide drugs, therapeutics? What did the patents process look like for Seragine? So.
Yeah, great. I'm happy to answer that. Starting with the advantages of siRNA therapies. So you're right, in assuming that kind of the standard of care currently in the field is protein therapies or antibodies or small molecules. So all of those have half-lives of maybe a couple weeks or less. So they have to be infused very regularly. With protein therapies, which are the gold standard, it's every few days, and with small molecules, it's every few hours, actually. So because we're looking at genetic disorders that affect someone for their entire life, that can become really burdensome. And, if they don't have perfect adherence to their dosing schedule, then that can give them kind of peaks and troughs and times at which they're at higher risk of a breakthrough event. So an siRNA therapy, if developed, with the proper delivery vehicle, can be effective for essentially months after a single administration. So if someone is just getting a few infusions a year, that really reduces the time that they're spending in the hospital or with healthcare providers, all these kinds of things. So that's kind of the major benefit. There's also advantages of reversibility and repeat dosing and less immunogenicity, all these types of things, which are advantages over protein therapies. But yeah, those are the major ones. And then IP process. So very important if you're in an academic lab is to make sure that you at least file a provisional patent before you publish anything or present at a conference. So like I was saying, I was very lucky that my PI had that in mind, because he had gone through some commercialization before. But yeah, how we did it was we filed the patent through our university. They have a dedicated office that takes care of that. And then we worked with a patent agent to, file the full patent. And then once we were a company, we went back to that same office to negotiate a licensing agreement from the university. And I think different universities might be a little bit different. Some, want to hang on to the technology more, and some are just happy to support the researchers in filing independently. But yeah, so, know what your university style is.
Perfect. Thank you. And
Amy.
thank you, Amy. There is another that it's related with this. Said maybe feel free to ask wherever you want. What were your experience like navigating this in patents for new therapies, medical device, or AI pipelines? So what kind of data is needed to get your work patented? That's a really good question, I think. And when do you need to have a patent or protect IP? I don't know, Amy, John, Leandro?
Yeah, I'll give you guys a chance to answer maybe first.
Yeah, I can answer here. So, I have experience when we kind of spun out of out of Stanford. We both spun out in the sense of we had technology that we developed outside of using Stanford resources. So I think you have to make it very clear when you're using university resources and when you're not, and when your start and end dates are. So there's very specific rules around that. And then so that that was one piece of it. And then we also licensed technology from multiple universities, working with their Office of Technology Licensing, or there's different words for the same thing. So we did both of those things. Early on, having a patent was really helpful in terms of getting investment. So I'd say, having a strong portfolio or a strong family of patents is always great. It allowed us to have kind of create some sort of moat, even though this moat could be purely from an investor perspective. Like, because at the end of the day, patents are either for like offense, for defense, or for like you want to get investment. So early on, like nobody's you're not gonna be in an offense and defense situation. Typically, it's mostly for investment. And then so at the end of the day, super helpful just to get get this technology in-house and then build upon it. And then when I say build upon it, you can keep develop internally, but have those patents be separate from that original patent ideally, so that you're not giving away all the like royalties back to the university unless you're philanthropic. But yeah, it's always a challenge to work with these offices of technology licensing because they want a big chunk of your company. So it's a balance, and there's tricks to kind of optimize so that it's clear what's connected and what's disconnected. And then just a point around what data you need. At the end of the day, at least for software patents, you don't really need a lot of data. It's just it's like a method patent, so you just describe your like how it works, and really zero data is required. You have to show that the software works, but it's not like you need to prove that it's clinically impactful or anything like that.
Thank you. So we have another question who is answered, but I want to ask again here because it's answered in the box. And it says, what kind of data will investors want to see? And there are specific people you should consult for this.
Well, the investors, I think they want to see a product more than data. But and if you can sell the products to somebody, if there is somebody who will buy it somehow, no? Yeah, but it's different because before I think with just with an idea you can get an investment, but now they are more restricted somehow, and they are looking for more data, like a product or an MVP maybe working, and somebody is interested in this MVP, or yeah, it depends.
Yeah, I would just say that I think it really depends on the types of investors that you're going towards also, because some will have a very specific focus, and they only invest in therapies for a certain set of disorders. So, obviously you'll need to show proof of concept in that pool. And then, like Leandro said, others, they won't be interested in data at all, actually, and just want to make sure that you have something that's marketable.
But I think it's important the market size, the unit economics, that's for sure, no?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll say like the business model and validation from the market in terms of folks that are willing to pay that price. And ideally, yes, you have some early contracts signed. It would be great before you raise a lot of money. If you can bootstrap, which means if you can have sales prior to you raising a lot of capital, I would think I think that would be great, just because you give away less of your company. And I've seen startups that if they're able to create prototypes with their own capital and then start getting sales and then start being cash flow positive without raising any capital or venture capital, that's like the ideal state. Unless you have truly like a $10 billion idea and you want to go big. So it's either you go really big or you try to bootstrap as much as possible and raise as little as possible to give away as little of your company as possible.
Okay, so now we have an interesting question. It says, there are differences between the academic and startup ecosystem, and what would you need to adjust or adapt to this difference? Because I imagine that we all start in the academic world and then we have to go to the startups and start meeting with people and another companies maybe is different. Do you need to adapt or is right? It's the same.
I mean, in small ways, you need to adapt. For instance, you know, collaborating with another academic can happen very quickly. You can just have an idea and, you know, start working on it the next day. In industry, if you want to partner with another company, then that's usually preceded by, you know, months of negotiation and paperwork so that everyone's on the same page about what you're working on. So in those kinds of ways, you know, it can be frustrating if you go into it thinking like an academic. Yeah, Leandro, what were you going to say?
No, yeah, I totally agree. It's different, and maybe how to treat some persons or people is different also, because in the academic you have like always the ego of the big scientist behind you, and in the startup world it's different. The startup world, you are all focused on the product and the clients, and yeah, it's different. In academic, you are focused more in publications, maybe in who is citing you in some paper, and yeah, the vision is different, totally different.
I would say, especially if you are a scientist or come from academia and you want to take an entrepreneurship role, and when I say that, like become a founder, you kind of need to shift your mindset to become a salesperson. Like you're the number one salesperson for your company. You're constantly selling. And if you find yourself, you're a co-founder and you're not doing that, I'd question it and be like, okay, well, maybe your CEO is, or maybe somebody else is, but like there needs to be one or two people that's not like the head of sales that you just bring in. Like if you're a co-founder, you really need to be, or maybe there's one or two co-founders that are very much commercially oriented, that are trying to convince either investors, you know, customers, employees to join. You're just constantly trying to sell. The other thing I'll mention is, it's very much do or die in the startup world. Like typically have like one, you know, 1/4 of capital left, and you're just working and you're just pumping and you're trying to go as fast as you can to hit certain milestones, to raise initial capital. So it's much more stressful, I'd say, compared to, you know, a PhD or postdoc. Like there's always a lot of, you know, alternatives. If things don't go well, you can always get additional grants. There's other PIs. Like there's I would guess a lot more safety nets on the academic side. I don't know, that's my experience at least. But when you're now responsible for payroll for 50 people, you just have a different sense of urgency.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sounds stressful. Really good. Yeah, and the importance of for like have a good team, no? Like multidisciplinary. If you can sell, you need someone that can, no? So we have some question more. One said it's how can universities better support researchers who want to become entrepreneurs? Are there specific programs or resources you found particularly helpful in your universities?
I would say just there's like the business schools at the universities have some sort of connection with either the like school of medicine or the biochemistry department. So like kind of these special programs that bring in scientists or engineering with the business. Like at all major universities, they have these sort of programs. So either joining classes, so and like capstone projects type thing, or specific programs that are outside of the curriculum that may be available at the university. So like for me, I actually had all three. So I signed up for a course to learn about business. And then I also signed up for a specific program in entrepreneurship at my university. And then I also did the incubation route. So those are like three methods that worked all well.
Okay. So we have another one particular to Leandro. So I don't know if you want to answer live or in
which one?
private. This one says, what best microbial metabolites are used to protect organoleptic
Properties. Yeah.
Properties.
Yes, properties.
Uh,
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it depends which what you are looking for, or in which kind of properties you are looking for, no? But we are using several antimicrobial compounds and antifungal compounds, also antioxidative compounds or antioxidant compounds. But there are many. Our approach is to use all microbial solutions, because there are many solutions in the market now, but are made by plant extracts or even insect extracts. But we are using just microbial solutions, so we just need a fermenter or bioreactor working all day, and we don't need to plant some plants somehow and extract plant from the plants. So yeah, but there are many microbial components or biomolecules that we can use now.
Thank
Also,
you. And
also we have always to think first for regulations. In sciences, you can find plenty solutions from microbial solutions, but then you face it with the regulations of each of these molecules, no, and that could be a problem. So maybe, as I think I mentioned in one of the answers, we first look for the regulation context of one molecule, and then we start using it somehow. Because as a startup, if you need to wait for 10 years or maybe 15 years for regulation process, which are very long for a startup, it doesn't have any sense, no.
Okay, and I think we have one more. I think it's very interesting. So, in your opinion, are there any common misconception that the academics have about startups?
Yeah, sure. I think so. I mean,
Okay.
they also always the academics guys, because I am an academic guy, you know, I'm researcher for Conicet now, but they are always thinking that you move to a startup because you want to earn money and to make a lot of money, and you forget of the science. That's no the reason. I was very bored somehow doing just scientists and doing just papers and writing just papers. So that's the reason because I jumped to a startup. And as John said, it's very stressful work because you have to take care about the people, about the regulation, about the market, about the client, about the customers, about the science. Yeah, about the fundraising, but it's stressful. But I'm happy to be there, and I'm really enjoying this trip. No.
I would say one, I don't know if it would be called a misconception, but I think that when a product is developed in a lab and then taken into a startup, often the market for that product will change. Like I think a lot of times maybe in the research environment, you think that it's the problem that it's solving is big enough, but for a lot of investors, they'll encourage you to look for kind of a larger market or a different market than maybe what you had initially had in mind. Because I think a lot of academics, you know, they're very smart people in a specific field, and that and there's very different people that can do market analysis and, you know, competitor matrices and all that kind of stuff that actually dictates where a product ends up being used.
I'll just add that a common or a misconception I had was how long it takes to make money and how long it takes to have an exit of some sort. So my exit is like you either get acquired or you go public. And by acquired, yeah, you can merge or you know, it's outright acquisition, but those are really the only two, or you could just keep it going kind of forever. In that third category, I would just be careful that you're not a walking dead. And what a walking dead means is that you're a company that just, yes, it's kind of going like this, and it just kind of goes like this forever. And you like you're maybe not profitable, and there's no real exit strategy. And like I see a lot of those startups who are like, what are you trying to do? Are you just waiting for somebody to acquire you, or are you going to be aggressive and grow your sales team to try to go like have exponential or like better commercial success? So I just be careful and to not be one of those companies. In a way, you'd almost maybe want to take bigger risk to just not be one of those companies that just last for 10 years, just not expanding or growing. So and then and I'll say, at least in tech, I thought at the time that you could maybe have an exit in 1 or 2 years. In healthcare, I can tell you it takes a long time to make your first dollar. And a long time, it's like could be 5 years or longer before you make your first dollar. And then two, it takes 10 plus years before you can get acquired or go public. And so it's a journey. Yes, you hear the companies are getting acquired with in 2 years, and yes, sure. But in general, if you look at a majority of the companies, especially in healthcare, it's much longer than 2 years.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join this event. Thanks to each of our speakers, Amy, Leandro, and John, for joining in today with us and sharing your extremely valuable insight throughout this and sharing your perspective on your startups and how you have to kind of sell yourself to everyone involved, I guess, and the enjoyable stress levels too, as Leandro had mentioned towards the end. Yeah, so I think this kind of wraps up our event for today. Thank you to our audience as well for tuning in, for their continual questions along the way. Seeing how they want to go from academia into the startup world. That was really great to see as well, the audience engagement. And thank you to the IUBMB as well, for providing us with the opportunity to hold this event. And yeah, feel free to join our social media on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter, also known as X now, to keep up to date with all of our events. And yeah, thank you once again to everyone.
Thank you so